Rain trickled lightly against the glass windows of Haneda International Airport as Naya Omalade stepped into Tokyo's chilled evening air. The exhaustion from her 20-hour journey clung to her like a second skin. After surviving a delayed layover in Istanbul, missed calls to her aunt, and navigating a new country with only basic Japanese phrases, Naya felt like a balloon slowly leaking air. She clutched her suitcase with trembling hands, her fingers stiff from fatigue and nerves. She fumbled through her phone, pulling up the address her aunt had sent weeks ago. A nearby taxi driver looked at her with polite confusion as she held up her screen. Where is this?" she asked with hopeful eyes, her tongue battling through unfamiliar syllables. The driver offered a sympathetic shrug. "No idea." Her stomach knotted in frustration. Her calls had gone unanswered. She was alone, hungry, and jet-lagged. Just as panic threatened to wrap its icy fingers around her, she spotted a glowing sign across the street, a hotel, luxurious by every definition. It looked like something out of a movie, and at that moment, she didn't care if it cost a fortune. She needed rest, not reason. The lobby was everything she expected. Crystal chandeliers, mirrors with gold frames, and the scent of lavender and expensive polish. But the receptionist's kind smile turned regretful when Naya asked for a room. "I'm sorry," the woman said in fluent English. "We're at full capacity." Naya's shoulders sank, but as she turned to leave, the receptionist added, "Actually, there was a late cancellation, penthouse suite, but it's quite pricey." "How pricey?" Naya asked. When she heard the amount, her eyes widened. That was nearly half her savings, but her legs screamed for mercy, and her mind was no longer debating. She handed over her card. Barely keeping her eyes open, she made it to the elevator and trudged into what might have been the most beautiful room she'd ever seen. High glass windows framed Tokyo's glowing skyline. A plush bed sat like a throne in the center of the room. And on the glass table, a bottle of unopened white wine with 2 glasses beside it, probably for the last guest. She didn't drink often, but tonight, it felt earned. She poured herself a glass, promising just a sip or two. The first one soothed her throat. The second warmed her chest. By the third, she was swaying slightly, giggling to herself as she sank into the silky bed sheets, whispering, "I deserve this." But her peace didn't last long. The soft click of the door opening yanked her eyes open. She sat up, confused, her heart thudding. Then she saw him. A man, tall, sharp features, hair that looked like he'd just run his fingers through it. Dressed in a black suit, his collar slightly loosened like he'd stepped away from a formal dinner. They both froze. His eyes darted to the wine, then to her. The tension in the room turned electric. "Who the hell are you?" he asked, his voice low but razor-edged. Naya stumbled to her feet, nearly knocking over the wine glass. I thought this was my room. The front desk gave me..." But as she reached for the key card, her world tilted. PH1302, not PH1230. A tired mix-up. An expensive, humiliating mistake. The man stepped closer, his voice laced with disbelief. "So, you broke into my suite and drank my wine?" "I didn't break in," she said quickly, cheeks burning. "I used the card. It opened. I didn't mean to..." He exhaled sharply, rubbing his temples. "You've got to be kidding me." "I'll leave," she added, reaching for her bag. But the room shifted beneath her. The wine hit harder than expected, and her heel caught the edge of the rug. She fell forward, into his chest, solid, warm, close. His breath hitched, hers caught. And then something unspoken passed between them. The kind of spark that short-circuits reason. 1 second, they were staring. The next, their lips met. It was a kiss she'd never forget, intense, unplanned, and electric. But as quickly as it began, it vanished in a blur. The next morning, she woke up beside him, his arm lazily slung across her waist. Her head throbbed, and her heart raced as reality came crashing back. She grabbed her things and vanished. What she didn't expect, however, was seeing him again. Not just seeing him, but working under him. He wasn't just a hotel guest. He was Riku Nakamura, heir to a massive medical empire in Tokyo, and one of the youngest board members of the prestigious hospital where Naya had just landed her dream nursing job. The moment their eyes met again across the hospital director's office, Naya felt her stomach drop. He remembered. His smirk said it all. The director introduced them formally, completely unaware of the tension threading through the room. Naya, this is Mr. Nakamura, one of the major sponsors and decision-makers for the hospital. You'll likely see him around. Oh, I've seen him, she muttered under her breath. Later that day, Riku summoned her to his office. She went in, bracing herself. If you're here to threaten me about last night... But Riku cut her off. Relax, I'm not angry. She blinked. You're not? I'm strategic. Her brows knit together. What's that supposed to mean? He leaned forward, that same smirk curling his lips. You're going to pretend to be my girlfriend. Silence. Naya laughed. That's ridiculous. Not if you want to keep your job, he said smoothly, cutting her laughter short. Her jaw dropped. That's blackmail. He shrugged, unapologetic. Call it a mutual agreement. You get to keep your job, your reputation stays clean, and I avoid rumors about a random woman sneaking into my hotel suite. You think people will believe I'm dating you? He met her glare without flinching. Oh, I think they'll be convinced once they see the sparks. She wanted to scream. This arrogant, infuriating man was turning her mistake into a contract. I don't kiss, I don't flirt, and I don't play arm candy, she hissed. Then let's make it convincing in our own way, he said. 6 months, that's all. She had no other choice. In a foreign country with her entire future on the line, she reluctantly agreed. But Naya added one last condition. No funny business. Riku raised a brow. Define funny. Her fists clenched. Just don't fall for me. He smirked again. Too late. Naya stood frozen in the empty hospital corridor, her breath still shallow from the conversation she had just stumbled out of. The audacity of that man, Riku Nakamura, was beyond anything she had encountered in her 28 years of life. It wasn't just that he had backed her into a corner with a smug smile and a mountain of corporate power. It was how effortlessly he'd done it, like someone flicking away a fly without thinking twice. She had only just arrived in Tokyo, braving a new country, a new language, and an entirely new career, and yet here she was, entangled in a web spun by a billionaire with sharp eyes and an even sharper tongue. And worse, her heart wouldn't stop racing every time she remembered how his breath had brushed her cheek in the elevator, how his smirk deepened every time he said something that rattled her carefully guarded composure. For the next few days, Naya tried her best to pretend the confrontation never happened. She buried herself in her work, pouring every ounce of energy into her shifts, handling demanding patients in the VIP wing, memorizing protocols, and avoiding eye contact with anyone who might remotely be associated with the Nakamura name. But no matter how hard she tried to dodge him, fate, or perhaps Riku's influence, seemed to have a twisted sense of humor. Every time she turned a corner, he was there. Sometimes watching from a distance, other times brushing past her in the hallway with a cryptic Miss Omelade that sent shivers down her spine. And once, just once, he had leaned against the nurse's station casually, offering her a steaming cup of green tea with a ghost of a smirk. Don't want my fake girlfriend collapsing on shift now, do I? Naya had snatched the cup from his hand and walked away without a word. She hated how easily he got under her skin. But most of all, she hated how her heart fluttered at the smallest trace of kindness in his voice. The first public appearance came sooner than she expected. One of the hospital's elite sponsors was hosting a gala, an event Naya had no business attending under normal circumstances. But as Riku had explained in his annoyingly smooth voice, they needed to establish the relationship. Eyes would be watching, cameras would be flashing, whispers would spread. He told her, without blinking, that she needed to dress well, smile occasionally, and act like she was in love with him, not just casually dating. The kind of love that makes the tabloids melt, he had said with a grin. You're a nurse, play the part. Naya stood in front of the mirror in her aunt's small apartment, wearing the satin emerald green dress Riku's assistant had sent earlier that day. It hugged her body in a way that was both elegant and scandalous, with a neckline that made her consider quitting the charade entirely. Her aunt, Auntie Folake, whistled low as she tied her jewel. You look like you're about to steal someone's husband, she teased, adjusting Naya's earrings. I might actually be pretending to be someone's wife, Naya muttered, avoiding her aunt's gaze. She hadn't told her the truth, not all of it. When Riku picked her up that night, the transformation was complete. He wore a midnight black tuxedo that looked tailored to his very bones. His presence was quiet, yet overwhelming, like a storm waiting behind glass. In the back seat of his sleek black car, he turned to her and said softly, You clean up well. Naya gave him a withering look. Don't get used to it. They arrived at the gala like a firecracker dropped into a pool of perfume. Heads turned, murmurs started. Riku held her hand, fingers laced with hers, and guided her through the golden foyer like he'd done it 100 times. And the moment they stepped into the grand ballroom, everything changed. Flashbulbs went off. The music dimmed in her ears. She felt like a marionette dancing on strings she didn't control. And Riku? He leaned down, whispered in her ear with that deep velvet voice. Remember, all eyes are on us. Try to look like you adore me. So she smiled. She played her role. And maybe, just maybe, she got too good at it. Because sometime between sipping champagne and laughing at a joke she didn't hear, she glanced at him. Not the billionaire, not the blackmailer, but the man. And something inside her shifted. She noticed how he kept adjusting his sleeves like he was uncomfortable with the attention, how he glanced toward the exit like he wanted to disappear, and how the mask he wore in public didn't quite reach his eyes. Later, as they sat in his car, the city lights dancing over the windshield, she finally asked, Why me? He didn't answer right away, just stared out the window for a long, long moment before replying, Because you were honest. You didn't know who I was that night. You didn't pretend. That's rare. Silence filled the car again. For the first time since the deal began, Naya saw a crack in his armor, and it terrified her more than anything. The next morning, the headlines exploded. Mysterious nurse spotted with Riku Nakamura at gala. Is the heir in love? The hospital was buzzing. Her phone wouldn't stop ringing. Her colleagues whispered in the break room. Even Auntie Folak raised an eyebrow at breakfast. And Riku? He walked into the hospital like nothing had changed. Naya realized with a sinking feeling that this wasn't just a silly agreement anymore. She had entered Riku Nakamura's world, a world filled with scrutiny, shadows, and secrets. And the worst part? She wasn't sure she wanted out. The days that followed blurred into a strange rhythm Naya never expected to get used to. Days filled with hospital rounds, subtle stares from colleagues who suddenly treated her like a celebrity, and evenings where Riku's name hovered in conversations she tried to escape. Every hallway seemed to echo with whispers. She's the one from the gala. They say he never even looked at women before. She must have done something to catch his eye. But none of them knew the truth. Behind the polished smiles and elegantly posed photos was a fragile thread straining with every heartbeat. This was no fairy tale. This was a performance. At least, that's what she kept telling herself. But pretending got harder with every passing day. The first time Riku surprised her at lunch, bringing miso soup and rice balls wrapped in seaweed because she'd skipped breakfast, Naya had laughed. Genuinely. Not the forced laugh she gave to keep up appearances, but one that slipped past her lips before she could stop it. "You're not so bad when you're not acting like a walking power trip," she teased. His response, a rare grin, not smug, not sarcastic, just soft, boyish, human. And for a heartbeat, she forgot this was all fake. But reality was quick to remind her. That evening, she returned to the penthouse, not because she wanted to, but because Riku's team insisted they needed more couple moments for the press. She found him on the couch, sleeves rolled up, typing rapidly on his laptop, a half-eaten bowl of instant noodles beside him. He barely looked up when she walked in. "The press has your name now," he said calmly. "Paparazzi will probably follow you for a while. Stay close. It'll be safer." "Safer?" she repeated, dropping her bag. "Are they dangerous?" "Not yet, but the public can be cruel, especially when they think someone's not worthy of their prince." He said it with a detached tone, but Naya caught the flicker of emotion in his eyes. She lowered herself onto the opposite end of the couch, unsure how to respond. "Why do they care so much? It's not like you're royalty." He chuckled bitterly. "In Japan, old money might as well be a crown, and I'm the heir they love to hate, cold, emotionless, distant." "Are you?" she asked, before she could stop herself. He turned to her, finally looking her in the eyes. "What do you think?" Naya hesitated. "I think you hide, behind control, behind the suit, behind this ridiculous fake dating scheme. I think you've never let anyone in." The silence between them grew heavy. And then he said, in a voice so quiet it nearly broke her, "You might be right." They didn't kiss that night. They didn't even touch. But something shifted. Something unspoken settled between them like a secret only they could share. A week later, Naya received a call from her aunt while she was on break. "Naya," Auntie Folek's voice trembled, "I need you to come home. Something's happened." Her heart leapt into her throat. She rushed across the city, coat barely on, shoes untied, only to find her aunt sitting in the kitchen, eyes glassy. "I lost my job," she whispered. "What? How?" Naya sank to her knees beside her. "Rumors," her aunt mumbled. "They said I was linked to some scandal. They mentioned him. That your name is all over the internet." Naya's chest constricted. Her aunt had worked 2 jobs to send her to nursing school in Nigeria. She was the reason Naya was even standing in Tokyo now. And this fake relationship was now destroying the one person who had always protected her. She stormed into Riku's office the next morning, eyes blazing. "You promised this would stay clean. You said no one would get hurt." Riku stood up, alarm flickering in his gaze. "What happened?" "My aunt lost her job because of this circus, because people think I'm some gold digger dangling off your arm." "I'll fix it," he said immediately. "Fix it?" She laughed coldly. "You don't fix things, Riku. You control them. You think just because you have money and power, you can twist lives into whatever shape you want." He looked like she'd slapped him. She turned to leave, but he caught her wrist, not roughly, just enough to make her stop. "I didn't mean for this to hurt you," he said, his voice rougher than she'd ever heard it. "Or your family. I'll take care of it." I swear something in his tone made her pause. He looked broken for the first time, and suddenly she wasn't sure who was playing pretend anymore. That night, Riku visited her aunt in person, brought an apology, a recommendation letter, and a quiet promise. "You deserve your peace. Let me help." Auntie Folek, ever the warm spirit, forgave quickly. But Naya watched him the whole time, stunned. She hadn't thought he was capable of humility. Back at the penthouse, she found herself pouring 2 glasses of plum wine instead of 1. When he joined her on the balcony, Tokyo's skyline glittering below, she handed him a glass without a word. They drank in silence. Then he said softly, "You scare me, Naya." She blinked. "What?" "You see through me, and I've spent my whole life making sure no one could." She didn't respond, just leaned against the railing beside him, letting the silence wrap around them. For the first time in weeks, the air between them wasn't filled with tension or sarcasm. It was filled with possibility, and neither of them knew what to do with it.